diving into a big one today, a topic I know a lot of us think about, and that's achieving real financial freedom. Not just, having money, but the choices it gives you. And you've found some fascinating sources on this, so I'm ready to get into it.
It really is a fascinating topic, and it does go beyond just the numbers. It's more about aligning your money with what you actually value and the goals you've set for yourself. And we're going to break down how to build that kind of security, make it last.
Let's do it. I've always thought that a solid financial foundation, like a good place to start, is knowing where your money's going in the first place.
That's so true. It's that classic budgeting advice everyone says, but a lot of us kind of overlook it, right? It's like you wouldn't build a house without a blueprint. Well, a budget. It's not about restricting yourself. It's more like having a plan so you can decide where you want your money to go instead of it just disappearing.
Totally. And speaking of important things, the sources we're looking at today really emphasize having that emergency fund. We always hear 3 to 6 months of expenses, but seeing how that actually plays out, especially with everything happening, it really makes you think.
It's like that safety net, right?
Yeah.
If something unexpected happens, medical bills, job loss, that peace of mind is huge. And I like how one source even called it like the actual foundation of your financial house. It gives you that stability so you can actually build on it.
Okay, so I've got our budget, our emergency fund. It's like we're putting on our financial armor. Now, what about tackling debt? Because our sources did not shy away from that at all.
And for good reason. It's a huge roadblock to actually achieving financial freedom. And you've probably heard of the two most popular ways to handle it, the snowball and the avalanche methods.
Give me the breakdown. Snowball. That's the one where you pay off the smallest debts first, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really good for staying motivated because let's say you have a $500 credit card bill and then a $5,000 personal loan. Snowball says you focus all your extra payments on that smaller credit card debt first, no matter the interest rates. Then once it's gone, you roll that payment amount over to the bigger loan, hence the snowball.
So it's that feeling of, yes, I did something, and it keeps you going.
Exactly. That momentum is key, especially with debt repayment. Now, avalanche, that one's a bit more strategic because it's all about minimizing the total interest you're paying. So you prioritize the debts with the highest interest rates, no matter how big or small.
Okay, so maybe less of that instant gratification, but better for your finances in the long run.
That's the trade-off, right? Let's say you've got that same $5,000 loan at 10% interest, but then a $2,000 credit card balance at a whopping 20%. You'd actually focus on that credit card debt first because it's costing you way more in interest. And there was this study that using the avalanche method actually saved people, on average, like $1,000 in interest payments compared to the snowball.
Wow, see, choosing the right method really depends on what your priorities are and, of course, your own financial situation. But no matter what, having some kind of plan to tackle that debt is key.
Absolutely. You want to be in control instead of letting it control you, right? And once you've got that debt monster under control, that's when you can really start focusing on making your money work for you.
Which brings us to
Investing. This is where things start to get really interesting. We always hear about compound interest and how it's a game changer. But what did our sources have to say about it?
think of compound interest as your money's superpower. It's basically earning interest on your initial investment and then on any interest you've already earned. So it just kind of snowballs over time. There's that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. What does that tell you?
The sooner the better, even if it's small amounts.
Exactly. The sooner you start investing, the more time your money has to grow. And the sources mention index funds as a really good option, especially for those just starting out. Have you heard of those? I've heard of them, but break it down for me.
Imagine instead of trying to pick individual stocks, which, let's be real, can be risky, you're basically investing in a whole bunch of stocks that represent a certain part of the market or even the entire stock market. That's an index fund. It helps spread out the risk because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket,
Right, yeah. That definitely sounds less intimidating than me trying to be like a stock market whiz over here.
Right. And the best part, you don't need to be a financial guru to get started with them. There are a lot of low-cost options out there, and you don't need a ton of money to get started. So it's a really good way to just dip your toes into the investing world and start benefiting from that compound growth.
Okay, so we've covered the importance of budgeting, that emergency fund, some strategies to tackle debt, and now we're dipping our toes into investing. It's like we're slowly building a financial house, brick by brick.
I like that analogy. And just like building a house, achieving financial freedom takes planning, obviously, patience, and consistent effort. But Unlike a physical house, what we're talking about today, these are the tools to build something even more important, and that's your financial well-being.
That's a great point. So we've laid the groundwork, but how do we make sure that this financial house of ours is built to last, for years to come? And this is where I think long-term planning and being smart about the choices we make every day, that comes in, right? Our sources seem to really emphasize that.
Absolutely. Let's go beyond these initial steps and look at the long game of financial freedom, because this is where it gets really interesting.
So we've laid the groundwork, but how do we make sure that this financial house of ours is built to last, for years to come? And this is where I think long-term planning and being smart about the choices we make every day, that comes in, right? Our sources seem to really emphasize that.
Absolutely. Let's go beyond these initial steps and look at the long game of financial freedom, because this is where it gets really interesting. One concept that kept coming up was this idea of living below your means. And before you think we're saying you have to live a life of, deprivation, hear me out.
I was just thinking that it's not about deprivation, but maybe it's more about being really aware of the choices you make with your spending.
Exactly. It's about making sure your spending habits match up with your values. Like, let's say traveling is more important to you than having the latest gadgets. Well, living below your means in that case could mean choosing a less expensive trip this year so you can invest more in those future travel plans. Or maybe you're really passionate about sustainable living. That could mean investing in energy-efficient appliances now to save money on your bills in the long run.
So it's like finding that sweet spot between enjoying today and setting yourself up for a good tomorrow. Like, hey, I'm all for treating myself to a nice dinner out, but maybe
Yeah.
I don't need to order everything on the menu.
Right. It's the small choices that really add up over time. And this actually ties into another big theme from the sources, the whole idea of setting clear financial goals. Where do you even see yourself financially in, let's say, 5, 10, even 20 years?
That's a big question. I know I can be guilty of setting these like super ambitious goals and then feeling discouraged if I don't achieve them right away. Did our sources offer any advice on setting more effective, long-term goals?
They did. One source specifically recommended using the SMART goal framework. Have you heard of that?
To refresh my memory.
So SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Okay, so instead of just saying, I want to retire early, I need to actually define what early means to me, put a number on it, and maybe even break it down into smaller steps.
You got it. So a SMART goal for early retirement could be, I want to retire at age 55 with $1 million saved in my investment accounts. See how much more concrete and actionable that is.
It definitely feels less overwhelming when you break it down like that. But let's be real, even with clear goals, staying motivated can be tough. Life happens. Did the sources get into that whole aspect of planning?
They did. And one thing that kept coming up was this idea of not just setting goals, but actually visualizing yourself achieving them.
Okay, so I'm picturing myself on a beach, financially secure, retired at 55 with a drink in my hand. Now what?
It's not just about the end result. It's about engaging all your senses.
Yeah.
What does it actually feel like to be financially secure? What are you doing? Who are you spending time with? The more vividly you can imagine it, the more real and achievable it becomes in your mind.
I can see how that would really help you stay motivated, especially when you hit those inevitable financial speed bumps in life. But besides visualization, did the sources offer any practical tips for staying on track with these long-term financial goals?
Absolutely. One really effective strategy is to break down those bigger goals, the ones that seem really far off, into smaller, more manageable milestones. Think of it like climbing a mountain. You don't focus on the summit the entire time, right?
Yeah.
You set smaller goals like reaching the next base camp. It makes the climb feel way less daunting.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So instead of fixating on saving $1 million for retirement, which feels pretty impossible right now, I could focus on saving $10,000 by the end of the year and then celebrate that win and set a new milestone.
Exactly. It's all about creating that feeling of making progress and accomplishing something. Each milestone you hit just reinforces that and keeps you motivated to keep going.
This is all starting to paint a much clearer picture for me. It's not just about crunching numbers. It's about aligning your finances with your values, making intentional choices, and honestly, designing a life that brings you joy now and in the future.
Could have said it better myself. It's about moving away from that scarcity mindset and embracing one of abundance. Which reminds me, the sources also talked about how important it is to cultivate a healthy relationship with money overall.
Now, that's something I think we could all benefit from exploring a bit further. It's not just about the practical stuff, but also the emotional and psychological side of money, right?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those often overlooked aspects of achieving true financial freedom.
It's not just about the practical stuff, but also the emotional and psychological side of money.
You're absolutely right. It's something a lot of the sources really honed in on, this
Yeah.
idea that we need to build a healthy relationship with money.
Because it's not just about, dollars and cents, is it?
Exactly. It's not just a tool. It's really tied into our emotions, our values, even how we see ourselves, our self-worth.
It's true. I know I've definitely caught myself feeling anxious about money, even when things were going pretty well financially.
Oh, that's so common. And a lot of it comes down to our money mindset, those beliefs we have about money, often shaped by things we experienced early on or messages we've gotten from society.
Like what?
Well, for example, if you grew up hearing things like money doesn't grow on trees, you might be more likely to hold on to money really tightly, even when it would actually be smarter to invest it or even just spend it.
It's like we're carrying these limiting beliefs, sometimes without even realizing it, and they can really sabotage us.
Exactly. And so the first step is just being aware of it. Pay attention to what you're thinking and feeling when you deal with money, what triggers that anxiety or that feeling of scarcity. And once you see those patterns, you can start to challenge them and reframe them.
So instead of freaking out when I see a potential expense, maybe I should take a breath and actually assess if I can afford it, see if there's another way to do it, or adjust my budget.
That's it. It's about moving from just reacting to things to being more proactive. And it's not just our inner voice. It's about the choices we make every day, making sure they line up with what we actually value.
So give me an example.
Okay, let's say you value experiences more than material possessions. Your choices might reflect that you spend less on stuff and more on things like travel or events that bring you joy.
So it all comes back to being intentional with our choices.
Exactly. And it's important to remember it's a journey. It's not like you wake up one day and bam, you have a perfect relationship with money. It takes time, it takes effort, and honestly, it takes a willingness to look at those deeply held beliefs and be open to changing them.
It sounds like having other people to lean on could be really helpful. Did the sources talk about the importance of community or finding guidance when it comes to finances?
They did, and it really can make a huge difference to connect with people who are on a similar path, whether it's online communities or workshops, even just having honest conversations with friends or family about your goals and your challenges. That support system is invaluable.
It's like they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Financial freedom doesn't have to be something you figure out all by yourself.
Absolutely. And don't feel like you need to be an expert to ask for help.
Hmm.
There's so many resources out there. Financial advisors, mentors, books, podcasts, even this deep dive. The important thing is to find what works for you and just take that first step, no matter how small, towards building that more secure and fulfilling financial future.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation. We've covered so much, the practical stuff like budgeting and investing, but also that often overlooked emotional and psychological side of money. And what I'm taking away from all this is that financial freedom, it's not just a destination, it's a journey. And it takes knowledge, strategy, but also self-awareness, intentionality, and a lot of patience.
Perfectly put. And remember, even a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So what's one action you can take today to move closer to your financial goals?
That is a great question, Tendon. We've given you a lot to think about today, but just remember, you're not alone on this journey, and we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are you taking away from today's deep dive? Connect with us on social media and let us know using hashtag financial freedom journey. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep building that financial future you deserve.